Hey guys, Loco here. Often enough, we're prisoner of the moments as humans, so whenever a movie has a really good ending, even if the movie was kind of shitty during the middle, we'll end up really liking the movie. A good example is Sixth Sense. That movie sucked throughout the whole movie, but the ending twist made it so fucking good, and I kind of think the same for LCS teams and pretty much everything in general. I think a lot of teams had very up and down split, but depending on how they finish out, we're going to talk about them differently. The narrative will change. So the final week of LCS is actually really important for a lot of these teams. So I kind of want to go down the list and talk about what every LCS team needs to do to finish the split really strong. So let's start top to bottom. First up is Team Liquid. Honestly, they don't have to do much, but one thing I would love to see them do is show us a glimpse of playoff TL. Last weekend, they lost to C9 and they almost lost to Optic. But I've seen this Team Liquid roster play at amazing levels when they were needed, like when it was required of them, like beating IG in the best of 5 at MSI or being able to beat G2 during Rift Rivals. I mean, we can talk about how little Rift Rivals meant, but this TL roster is scary as hell whenever they want to be, whenever they're actually tryharding. And honestly, they've just been kind of bored during the regular season, so that's all I want from TL. Just give us a glimpse of playoff Team Liquid. Now, moving on to CLG. What they need to do is don't pull a CLG. You guys have been great in summer. You really found your stride. The whole roster is working really well together. And honestly, Walden's been such a great coach for this team. They're versus 100 Thieves and Optic. They should clinch the second seed. There's no way CLG should lose to these teams. And I think that's exactly why I feel like they might lose to these teams and give up the second seed to Cloud9. You guys absolutely deserve this second seed. Please don't pull a CLG and just go clean 2-0. For C9, they need to figure out their substitution. So they have 3 main subs that they've been using: Blabber, Kumo, Deathly. And it's not really an easy choice on which 2 they're going to bring to playoff. Sneaky's been kind of underperforming, so maybe Deathly's a good option. Licorice, it seems like he's done with his injury, but we don't know if he can play full time. And he also hasn't been looking like the old Licorice. Maybe it's just him being rusty. As for Blabber, he's so good, but he's also behind the best player on C9 and Sven Skaren. So is it really worth to bring him to playoff? That's really just what C9 needs to figure out. It'd be nice if they can clinch the second seed, but honestly, CLG should take it unless some kind of a disaster. What they just really need to do for the final week is figure out which 2 subs they're going to bring into playoffs. Now, moving on to TSM. Oh man, TSM, what you need to do is prove everyone wrong. TSM as an org and every single player on it is under immense pressure right now. There's so much Rogue versus TSM discussion. Bjerg had his worst weekend ever. Acadian finally got the starting spot, but he's playing nowhere near like how he did in spring. And Zben's underperforming like crazy. Like, holy shit, I can't believe this is the same player that we saw play in Europe. Them beating Team Liquid would be amazing. It would set the narrative so well for TSM going into playoff, and they really need that confidence boost. But I just don't think that's very likely. All I ask of them is just show a little breath of life, show that last week was a fluke, and show that they are going to be a relevant team going into playoffs. Because if TSM bombs next week, holy, the narrative around them will be so negative all the way up until they actually play their playoff match. And yeah, I'm not sure if TSM as an org and the players can take that much negativity right now with all the pressure they're under.
Boo! You stink!
Moving on to GGS, what they need to do is solidify an identity. I love what they did last week. The return of Frog in specialty picks in Karthus plus Vel'Koz. FBI finding his footing as a hard carry ADC. It's been really good. Like, they're getting back to kind of their norm ever since that whole death lead for Keith trade happened. Like, now they just really need to solidify who they are as a team. Golden Guardians was they were relevant in spring because they knew exactly who they were. They knew exactly what strengths they had, what weaknesses they had, and they played to it. And they stopped doing some of that in summer. So I would love it if they can find their identity again and look strong going into playoffs. Now we have Optic. For Optic, they need to close the deal. They started 4-0, now they're at 8-8, and they face C9 and CLG, 2 of the top 3 teams. Optic has never ever made playoffs, and now they have a shot at it. It's a tall order, but it can be done. They're up a game compared to Clutch and 100 Thieves, who are right below them. Going 1-1 is enough, and they can clinch it in tiebreakers. So Optic, you almost got it done. You can make playoffs for the first time. I mean, for the last time actually, since this Optic org is getting sold. This is the one chance Optic has at making playoff as an org in North America. You can do it, I believe. Now, for Clutch Gaming, for them, it's going to be don't let people forget you. Clutch started their franchise really strong with a historic upset over TSM and denying them their first finals ever. And after that, the biggest news for Clutch has been they're getting bought up by Dignitas. They're one of the least talked about teams in the LCS, and they can set up their next year by making playoffs. But most importantly, not letting people forget that they actually exist as an org. Just be relevant. Like, show up, make a splash. That's all I ask. Now, for 100 Thieves, they need to steal a playoff spot. What an up and down year it's been for 100 Thieves. They were the second highest spenders and managed to completely flunk Spring Split. And it's after being a pretty decent org in 2018. They made Worlds for their first year. They started their summer kind of shitty also, but once the Ryu Fake God roster change came in, they've been on an upswing. If they can steal a playoff spot, it wouldn't meet the initial expectations that the fans and the org had, but it'll salvage the narrative somewhat. If they don't make playoffs, man, this 100 Thieves roster, what they're going to be remembered for is just spending so much money and not even making playoffs the entire year. I really don't want to see that from 100 Thieves. They've been such a good org in pretty much everything outside of League of Legends, so this is one way they can salvage their narrative for 2019. For FlyQuest, they need to be gauntlet ready. It's also been kind of a negative split for FlyQuest. No one expected them to do this badly after their spring. I don't think anyone predicted this kind of downfall of Pobelt there. They don't have a shot at playoffs, but they still have enough points for Gauntlet, so they gotta show up and let teams know they're not gonna be a walkover in Gauntlet. It's not very likely they make Worlds, but please don't be a joke for Gauntlet. Like, make sure your players are still motivated. Like, that's the worst thing ever. You lose in the final weeks and you know you still have to play Gauntlet and you're just sitting there miserably practicing. No one wants that. FlyQuest shows that you're Gauntlet ready. Lastly, we have Echo Fox. Echo Fox, you have one job. Set up the off season. You guys went through a lot of problems this summer. Racist investor, being forced to sell, rush benched, solo bench. You really need to set up what you're going to be doing in the off season. Is Solo going to be a player for you next year? He was one of the best players on Echo Fox, and he hasn't seen play for the last few weeks. Like, no one knows what's going to happen with him. And also figure out who's going to play for your roster next year so you can get a jump start on the off season. The only thing that seems solid is how much they like Hakuho. Everyone else but Hakuho has been subbed out in the summer. So yeah, no one really knows what's happening with Echo Fox, and them setting up going into off season is going to be very important, or it's going to be another up and down year. We don't want that. 2 games isn't a lot, but it's still enough to finalize on some things. If there's any questions about Solo, I want them answered in the final week. Let him play. Like, just figure stuff out, dude. I hope you guys enjoyed this piece. I love doing separate YouTube pieces. It feels more entertaining. I can be just myself and not have to deal with an angry old ginger yelling at me for every single thing I say. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed it. Don't forget to subscribe, comment, and like the video. And remember, I'm not crazy, I'm just Loco. Bye!